Fantasy people, welcome back to another video. Today we're looking at the top 6 forwards to go on from our top 10 midfielders that I did last week. So in this one, we're going to be looking at the players that have forward status. So that's any player that has forward status. In this video, I've particularly left out Bailey Smith because he's going to be out for the next 4 games anyway, even though he would have obviously been one of the top options in this position, but he's deliberately been left out. Moving on with the video, so first of all, I want to show you the current top 6 forwards. So at the moment, looking at that top 6, we've got Bailey Smith coming in at number 1, Josh Dunkley at number 2, we've got Tim English at number 3, Tim Taranto at number 4, Adam Treloar number 5, and Bontempelli number 6. Then there's Luke Parker at 7, and Stephen Coniglio at number 8. So based on the first half of the season, those guys have given us the top averages. Some of those guys have missed more games than others, like Tim English, but that's sort of the general gist of it. Let's move on. First, I want to show you some of the guys that have missed out on this top 6 that were previously top players in their position. So the first one that I want to look at is Mitch Duncan. So Mitch Duncan currently has an average of 89, which is well down on what he has done previously. So last year he had an average of 101, but he did have a game where he was injured and had a very low score. So if you take that game out, it was more like an average of 110 for the season. Mitch Duncan, I just sort of feel like the game's gone past him a little bit. His time on ground numbers are around the same. So he averages 77% time on ground, which is quite low, but he's done that throughout his career. So that's not really the problem. His CBAs are very low, but Mitch Duncan is not a player that relies on CBAs to get his points. He never has. In fact, games that I've seen him with high CBAs, I'd rather him not be playing in that position, basically. He's better off out on a wing or on the half-back line. We look at last year. So in 2021, he averaged 24 disposals, 8 marks and 2 tackles. So he's really elite in that mark category. He gets around the ground, gets free and gets those uncontested marks. His tackle numbers have always been down and that's fine. I just think the way that Geelong are playing this season, they don't play that chip-to-chip mark game as much. They've sort of gone for a hybrid between keeping possession and hurting the opposition that way, and sort of trying a little bit that Richmond style where they surge the ball forward. They've gone for that a little bit more. And the other thing is, I think Geelong have really tried to switch their game to play through Tom Stewart a lot more. And Mitch Duncan also playing that sort of half-back wing role. He's sort of just been the left-out guy. I think in some ways their game plan sort of moved him on. He's getting a little bit older, and they're really relying on Tom Stewart to do that uncontested mark and bring them forward. So I don't see Mitch Duncan getting back to his ways of the past where he averaged over 100. I see him going in like the mid-90s, low 90s, something like that. Even though, based on his history, he has been an excellent scorer, I just don't think he's going to be in the list. The other one I wanted to highlight is Jordan De Goey. So you look at Jordan De Goey's figures and you think, fantastic. He averages 86% time on ground, which is great. 77% CBA. So that's elite midfield territory. You would think he would be scoring really well, but he's putting up fantasy numbers of just 82 average per round this year. Averages the 22 disposals, which is quite low for someone with 77% CBAs. But what he's doing really, he's attending those CBAs, but he's just pushing forward. So if he doesn't get the clearance, he just heads straight forward. His tackle numbers are extremely low, so the centre bounces aren't helping him get those tackles up. He's sitting at 3 tackles per game, just up on 2 from last year. If we compare his CBAs, last year he was attending just 47% compared to the 77% that he's doing now. And last year was a weird year as well because he came home like a steam train, 110 in the second half of the season, and everyone thought with that lift in CBAs and that role that he's playing that he was going to be a top scorer around the 100 to 110 mark this year. It hasn't happened. I think it's partly because he's not really playing a pure midfield role, and the other thing is Collingwood's game style. So if we, again, I highlighted it in the midfielders with a Gold Coast and Tuke Miller. Collingwood have done a similar thing. So a mark differential from 2022 to 2021 of minus 24. So they're taking minus 24 marks this season. The other one is disposals, and they're at minus 17. So Collingwood and the Gold Coast are those two teams that have a really, really huge differential between their marks and their disposals in the team game style. So I think that's another reason that Jordan De Goey is just not getting his hands on the ball and getting those free uncontested marks like he was in the past. So, given those little caveats from those two players, and just to show us, let's start off with the top 6 forwards. Coming in at number 6, we have Luke Parker. So Luke Parker's been a really solid fantasy scoring player. I don't really see his data changing much from what he's done so far in the year, but I think what he has been doing is going to stand him to rank inside the top 6 coming home. I have him going at a projected average of 98, so just under the 100 mark. We look at his time on ground. He spends 81% time on ground, which is, again, what he's done throughout his career. Nothing's really changed there. He's attending 66% CBAs, which is a little bit down on last year, which was the 72. And that's probably just a few guys coming in there a little bit more. Like we said, Chad Warner and Rowbottom also spending a bit of time in there. If we look at his statistics, so 2021, he averaged 28 disposals. So he's considerably down on that this year, averaging the 10 less handballs. So he's getting his hands on the ball a little bit less. But where he's upped that is his tackle numbers. So playing that pure midfield role, he's really got those tackle numbers up to 5 per game. And he's also getting around the ground for more uncontested marks, which is sort of bucking the trend a little bit. Most players are down on their marks this year. Luke Parker's getting around the ground and taking those marks, which is fantastic. Giving him a fantasy score so far of 95, and I think he'll get that to around a 97, 98 for the rest of the season playing that role. Remembering that the first few games of the season, he did play purely as a forward. So I think he can get those disposal numbers up, and that will give him an average of 98. Coming in at number 5, it's Tim Taranto with a projected average of 103. Now, Tim Taranto is a little bit hard to get a read on here because we haven't seen him yet play under the new coach, Mark McVeigh. But what we can look at is his history and his probable role in that team. So his time on ground this year so far has been 85%, which is just up on 2021 of 82. His CBAs have been at 47%, which is down 2% on his 2021, but more or less the same. I do think that under the new coach, he is going to get a little bit of a bump in those CBAs, which is going to help him a bit. We look at his 2021 stats. He averaged 26 disposals, 5 marks and 5 tackles for his 107 average. If we look at his season splits, he did go at 115 in the back half of last year. So that's showing that he has that really high ceiling and can be, he can really mix it with the top, even midfielders for fantasy. This year, we haven't seen the best of him. I think he came out firing in the first few rounds, averaging 115 over the first few rounds, and then really dropped off. But it was so hard to get a read on those Giants guys early in the season. I think under Mark McVeigh, he's going to get that permanent midfield role, and he's going to go at just over 100 with 103 average coming home for the rest of the season. Next up, coming in at rank number 4, it's Marcus Bontempelli. I also see him coming home with a 103 average. Why? Last year, he averaged 111 in the first half of the season, so that shows us that he can do it. Compared to other midfielders and top midfield forwards, he is a little bit low on those disposals, so only coming in at 21 disposals this season. He does have a good kick-to-handball ratio that helps that. And he also has 55% CBAs. He went at 73 last year. So he does have a high CBA number for a forward, which gets those tackles up. You look at his tackle numbers. 2021, he averaged 5 tackles. 2022, he averaged 5 tackles. Last year, going at 106 across the season. I don't think he's going to get to 106. I just don't think the role's there for him this year. And we know that he is carrying that AC joint problem. I think the bye week's going to do him good, and he's going to... Realistically, Marcus Bontempelli, he's the Western Bulldogs' best player. He's going to have to come home. They're now missing Bailey Smith. He's definitely going to improve on that 97, but I can't quite see him going the same as last year, given that they are still going to rely on him to kick goals and go forward. So I've got him coming in at rank number 4 with a projected average of 103. That's where I see him. Coming in at number 3, it's the born-again giant, Stephen Coniglio. Pretty much everybody had him in their teams. He only went at 61 average with a really injury-interrupted season last year. Everyone saw him being that, top 3 or 4 forward this year, and it just didn't happen at the beginning. Under Leon Cameron, he seemed to be that forgotten man. He just couldn't get on the park in the role that we wanted him to. I've got Stephen Coniglio coming in at an average of 105 in this new role. As we can see, his time on ground is 83%, which is very good, and his CBAs are at 32%, but if you take the Mark McVeigh era, the CBA percentage is 65%, so that is not an accurate reflection. Last year, he also just had the 36% CBAs, but we know he is a premium inside midfielder, so I believe he's going to continue that role. If we look at his disposals this year, he's averaging 23, but once again, that number is a lot higher if you take the new role under Mark McVeigh. 4 marks, 5 tackles is fine. He's going at 93. I can't see that staying the same. He sort of reminds me, Stephen Coniglio, as if we're talking about soccer, he's sort of like one of those deep-lying midfielders that makes late runs into the box. He's kind of like that. He enters that 50 late, kicks a few goals. He's going to be perfect for us coming home, and you need to get on Stephen Coniglio if you don't have him. Number 2, it's Josh Dunkley. Now, this might be a little bit surprising to some people as he's not in at number 1. The reason that is because I don't think the role is as good as it has been when he scored that sort of 115, 116 kind of rank. The first 6 rounds of the season, Josh Dunkley did not go under 100, and there were some big hundreds in that too, but at that time, he was playing more of a midfield role, a lot more CBAs. If we can see his CBA percentage this year, it's at 45%, which isn't great, but it was actually a lot higher than that over the first 6 rounds, and it's really dropped off, so it's actually less than 45%, and the season split, if you do it on the first half of this year, the season splits are around 120 for the first 6 rounds and around 105, 106 for the next 6 rounds. So he really is sort of coming home slowly, if you will. 2021, he averaged 23 disposals, but as you can see, that kick to handball ratio was not as good for his 89 fantasy points. He also only took 4 marks and 5 tackles. It was not Josh Dunkley's year. This year, it's a lot better. It's 12 kicks to 14 handballs for his 26 disposals. And where he's really elite is in that mark and tackle figure. He really fills the stat sheet, Josh Dunkley. 7 marks, 6 tackles for his 112 fantasy points. I cannot see him continuing that 112 or even the 116 that he did at the beginning. That's why I have him coming in at 107 and ranked number 2 on this list. Coming in at number 1, it's Tim English, basically the new number 1 ruck at Western Bulldogs this season. I picked him up in my fantasy team once I saw that Steph Martin was not in the team. I've watched this guy in the flesh, and he really looks like a midfielder when you watch him play. The Bulldogs guys actually look for him. And one of the things that stands out for Tim English as a ruckman is that kick to handball ratio. So if you look, last year in 2021, it was 7 kicks to 8 handballs. And this year it's gone up to 13 kicks, 9 handballs. So he's really increased those disposals this year and also kicking. So the Western Bulldogs trust him to get the ball in his hands and actually kick it forward and set them up. He's got really high marks, being that tall player, that presence and the outlet for them coming out of defence. Only the 2 tackles, but he is a ruckman, so that's traditionally low. And he also, he's not the best tap ruckman, so he's not getting huge hit-out figures, but where he is good is those disposals around the ground. You look at last year, playing as that sort of forward second ruck guy to Steph Martin, he didn't have the opportunity to get the points. His season splits were 79-82. The big one to look at there is the CBAs. So in 2021, just the 50% CBAs. Now he's gone up to 87 in that number 1 ruck role. He will easily be the number 1 forward option if you discount Bailey Smith. And I've got him going at 109, but I think it could even be a touch higher than that. Okay, guys, there's another one. So that is my top 6 forward projections for the rest of the season. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you next time.